The presenting sponsor of OnEducation is Participate. Lately, teachers from all over have been working together to find new approaches to provide quality remote education. Participate's sister company, Participate Learning, presents United We Teach, a global gathering place for educators to share distance learning resources as we navigate these strange times. For these resources and more, visit participate.com/oneducation.
If Ann Cosmo was a religion, I would be the head priest. Welcome to OnEducation, part of the On Podcast Media Network. My name is Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glenn Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We'll talk about the new administration, discuss the relationship between educators and edtech companies, whether all teachers will get vaccinated soon, and our guest this week is Harvard lecturer and author Laura Schifter.
Glenn.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Ask me what I was doing right before we started recording the podcast.
What were you doing, Mike, before we recorded the podcast?
I was watching Harry Mack on YouTube.
Oh, dude. I love that guy. I can't get enough of him right now.
He's very good, but I think the best part about Harry Mack on YouTube is that he makes you smile.
Yeah.
And he makes the people he's rapping to smile.
Yes.
And I noticed I watched about 5 videos with him today, and the consistent theme is that he's just out there doing his thing and making people happy.
Yeah, it's just a super positive vibe is a best way I can describe it. For the people out there, if you don't know who Harry Mack is, go onto YouTube. Please watch it. And basically, he is an impromptu rapper. I'm sure there's a better way of
freestyle
rapper. There you go. And basically, he asks people on the street, or in this case, he's online, and he asks them for random words. He doesn't even know these people. He's never met them in his life. Just asks them for 3 random words. And then he weaves in a freestyle rap with those words in it.
Yeah.
But the amazing part is that it's not just the words, because that would be one thing. It's difficult to do. And I would say it'd be challenging to do that, to do a rap where you're rhyming the words and then you're including these random words that someone gives you. He does that, but he really digs deep on the topic of the words, and even in the behaviors of the guest or the person that's across from him, of how they're reacting to him. He's including it live as he's actually rapping. It is ridiculous. And then of course the most awesome part is this kind of really authentic vibe that just comes through the screen. Even, you can just sense it, and he's bringing smiles to people's faces, and my God, I can't get enough of him. Nicole, my wife, is probably being driven nuts by how much I've been watching of it, and then showing her, and I go, okay, you got to watch this one more.
Oh man. Yeah, he's been using this app called Omegle. Have you? Yes. I've seen this come up on TikTok. That my only interaction with this Omegle site, app, program, whatever, is on TikTok, but it's literally like a random video chat matchmaking service where you get paired up with people and you don't know what's gonna happen. And it's funny, in one of the videos he gets paired up with a guy who says all I see is, I won't repeat what he says, but he's basically saying that all he sees is inappropriate stuff, and it's pretty funny. And then the guy raps for him, and it makes his day, and it's pretty great. But I am moderately interested. I'm not gonna do this because I have no talent that I want to give to people randomly on a screen, even though that might be interesting. But this thing is pretty cool.
Yeah, so, I don't ever want to go on to that site, but I love what he's doing for people, and just from all over the world. That's what's interesting about this thing. Is like not even just people within the United States, but just in all age groups. There's those people from all age groups from everywhere around, obviously the United States, but all over the world too. And I love positive things that come off like that to make me smile. And I've been smiling a lot lately because of, we have a new president.
Hey, segue! Nailed it. Hey, Glenn, let's talk about the president of the United States.
Oh, it's so awesome.
And it's not the old guy.
Yeah.
We have I say, it's funny, I say we. I mean, the world is celebrating as well that Joe Biden, Papa Joe, is the president of the United States. I couldn't be happier. Kamala Harris is the freaking vice president of the United States. Holy crap.
It's official.
It's real. It happened. It's done. Governing is happening.
A lot already.
We skipped a week, and we probably skipped the worst possible week. But anyways, we're here, and listen, people have hope for the first time in a long time, right?
Yeah, and it feels like there potentially could be a significant change. I think I talked about it in the last podcast a couple weeks ago. We were just discussing how everything that happened at the Capitol and how divided the country felt. Now, after the inauguration and everything kind of even after that, though there's some arguments and there's some policy arguments, there's always going to be that philosophical differences of whatever might be. But you know what? It actually feels like normal Washington, D.C., which is the discussion of policies and politics, and discussing how we're going to make the country a better place through different laws and, whatever else it might be. It just feels normal, as the best way I can describe it, but in a very, very positive way. I think there's like you just said, there's some hope. I think there's some bringing of people together, even at school, even with people of differences, of whatever might be. It feels like we're on the cusp of of something better. We're going to get through this moment, rather than it was like before, where we were like, when is this going to ever end? And I'm talking about everything, like everything was like just piling up, and now it's like, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I'm trying to say.
The source of a majority of the crazy was one person. So, the crazy has left the room. Yes. And when the majority of the crazy goes, we can deal. Humanity has always had a certain kind of normal level of crazy. There's always, in the history of history, there's always been crazy people. There's a great hardcore history episode of a whole town of Anabaptists right after the Reformation that like locked themselves up in their town and just became like this Lord of the Flies village in Germany. It's like the most bizarre story you've ever heard. Just go back and if you're into like crazy stories in history, like that episode of Hardcore History is absolutely amazing. And it's like chock full of like religion and psycho and equal parts of crazy. From a number of different people. And listen, so we can deal with, a certain kind of level of idiots and craziness. Like there's always going to be that. Yes. But the amount of fake news went and fell off a cliff because the person producing a majority of the source of a majority of the fake news was the president of the United States. And when he got deplatformed, it went from like way up here to like way down here. You didn't see me move my hands, but Glenn did, and it was effective. Trust me. So, it's nice to be back to just like a normal level of
Yes.
crazy where we can handle what's her name threatening articles of impeachment on Joe Biden. Everyone thinks she's an idiot, and it's super dumb, and it's like it will be summarily dismissed as crazy because that's what it is, and we move on with our lives, right?
Exactly.
I think the lasting legacy of Trump, though, is that there's going to be a little bit higher level of that normalcy of crazy people. Some of them snuck their way into Senate seats, like Tommy Tuberville, who couldn't discern his way into how government works if it was written out for him on a piece of paper. And then some of these other people, but we'll deal with it. They have a majority in the Senate, they have a majority in the House, they have the presidency and the vice presidency, and I think things are going to get done. And I'm feeling like at the very least, I don't have to look at the news every day and just see what stupid ass thing this guy did next.
Yeah.
It's just going to be normal. I don't need to worry that the world is going to get lit on fire every day.
I'm so happy too, Mike, that he has been deplatformed too. It's like this humongous megaphone. It's like taking away the biggest giant megaphone of the world and going, whip, we're taking that thing away. And it really does make a difference. Even though I'm sure his voice is being heard in other platforms, blah, blah, blah. But it's not in the platforms where all the rest of us are at. We aren't hearing it, and we don't get to hear the crazy conspiracies and that he still won the election, etc. Who cares? All that stuff. It's like, adios. And now we can go back to actually making this a great place, which it is, with great people and fantastic ideas and a way out of the corona virus and the vaccines, that being able to do all those things, do all the stuff that we need to be doing and working together towards a common goal, which that should be the common goal at the moment. But it feels like we can do it, and like it's actually not only is it possible, but it's like it feels like we are gonna do it.
Nice.
Yes.
So let's talk about vaccines then.
Yes.
Tell us. So I can tell you what I know about what's happening in Ontario.
Sure.
In Ontario, the vaccine rollout is slow. We do have a terrible premier. So kind of it is what it is. He'll blame it on Justin Trudeau because that's what they do. We have a sense that we're not going back to school in person for probably a little while longer. Our peak we've come around the corner from our peak, we think. So we've actually, come around the other side the last week or so, which is good. And we're under the impression that all educators in Ontario might get the vaccine sometime in March, which is great. It kind of lines up with the idea that they may go back to school in person at the end of March break. So that's like the 20-ish of April.
Okay.
Somewhere, or not, sorry, not April, March.
March. Okay.
Somewhere in the middle of March.
Okay.
We may go back to school and teachers might get vaccinated. So that means Cheryl will get a vaccine. I suspect, the line from the government of Canada is that anyone who wants a vaccine will be able to get a vaccine by the end of September.
Okay.
So that's basically, what we're looking at is like a summer where a large amount of people are getting vaccinated. Almost all teachers, healthcare workers, frontline people will all be vaccinated. Probably, hopefully, to be honest, grocery store folks, all of these people who've been forced to work, essential services and stuff like that will be vaccinated. And then it's schmucks like me who sit in their home office at the end of the line. So I'll be decamped to my office for the better part of the summer. I will spend the summer enjoying my pool like I did last summer and not really leaving the confines of my house. But that's where we're at here. What's it like there?
I think what I've heard is various stories around the country, which is typical in the United States. The distribution of the vaccines has been left to the states. So there's a specific amount that was allotted to the states, and then they get to decide who's at the front of the line for the best way I can go ahead and put it. And in Minnesota, just last week, I had wrote some notes as far as like talking about this topic. And I was super frustrated because it looked like it was going to happen super slowly. And we're back teaching. Most of us are back teaching either in hybrid, or many teachers are already full face-to-face. Of course, with masking and some other types of things, but still face-to-face in these times. So things changed very quickly, specifically in the state of Minnesota. There was a huge allotment that was increased as far as specifically for teachers and school districts. And so this week, my wife and I are going to get vaccinated, which is crazy. And a huge chunk of our employees of our district, so not just educators, but our paraprofessionals, our cafeteria workers, our custodial staff, and everybody in between, administrators, secretarial staff, are going to be vaccinated, the ones that choose to go ahead and do that. And so that's incredible, because we're not a super big school. I would call us like a medium-sized school district. Many of the biggest school districts in Minnesota, of course, are in the Twin Cities. So for us to be able to have that opportunity, it feels so awesome. It feels so great. So again, like there's hope. There's things. Now, many of you guys listening out there, I know, are in a situation where it doesn't look good. It's grim, and it looks like it's going to be very slow to get to you, and that's terrible. But I think that the federal government's actually listening to that. They're listening to that, and they understand that our teachers, our educators, and all of the people that work within schools, they're all educators, need to get vaccinated if we're already basically making those moves to get back face to face. So I think it's great news, great progress. Just a shift from 1 week ago to this week. Again, that's only been 1 week since he's even been in presidency. It seems to be that things are moving forward. So super excited about that. And, for those of you that are still waiting, to hear, I'm hopeful for you that you will also get an opportunity to, if you want to, go ahead and get vaccinated.
I just read today that teachers in New Jersey boycotted going back to school because it was unsafe. And I mean, our mutual friend, Becky Latoff, Steam Cultivator on Twitter, she quit her job. There's tons of people who did that because they didn't feel protected by their school district. So listen, man, I'm really excited for you. That's awesome. You've done a really good job of staying safe. You've been very cautious, as you should be, as anyone should have been. And so I'm excited that you're gonna get your caution has been rewarded, and you're gonna get a vaccine, and that's exciting. I'm super happy. Listen, every few months, I think we have this conversation every 6 months or so, where you get pissed off about something that some, and it's usually just one. I don't know if we're gonna name them, but it's usually just there's one company, edtech company. You get you get pissed off about it. And then you try to burn it to the ground a little bit. And I enjoy it. I'm here for it, man. I mean, but tell me what's bothering you now.
So
with ambassador programs and
it's
ed tech companies.
It's just an interesting relationship between educators and the ed tech companies.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call them edu companies because not specifically always related to technology, but a lot of times now it really is. I've had many of those relationships. Some of them have been amazing and very fruitful, I would say, for both parties. A great relationship. I was, equal partners. And some of them have been very one-sided. And I think maybe that's the biggest lesson. And the biggest message I want to send out to any teachers. Make sure that you are going to get something out of the relationship. Don't feel bad about that. I'm telling you right now, if you are going to invest your time in being an ambassador or whatever you want to call it for any kind of company, make sure that you know what obviously what does it entail as far as the time commitment, et cetera, and what do you have to actually do. And then also on the other side, make sure that it's going to benefit you as an educator first, of course, but possibly in other ways too. Whether or not you want to be able to present at conferences, because we know friends, right, Mike, that have had companies like help them to get to ISTE, for example, or help them to pay for certain whatever might be, speaking gigs, et cetera, whatever might be. Help them to put them in front of audiences that maybe they wouldn't have had the opportunity to be able to reach otherwise. So just what I want you to do is don't feel bad about that. I think a lot of people do. They do feel bad. They're like, they feel like it's a friend, right? But just understand that's an entity and a company that's there to make money in number one. And Mike has said that to me several times when I get all emotional, because I do, and I go crying to him, usually through text messages or whatever it might be, irate or crying, whatever it might be. In the end, he has to bring me back down to reality and go, it's a company.
Funded by the marketing department. Every teacher needs to know that almost every EdTech ambassadorship and their programs are funded by the marketing department. That is where the money for your swag, your stickers, all of that. Oh, I almost did it. All of that stuff that they send you, right, is marketing. The budget for whatever platform they use, whatever tools, the people who run the ambassador program are almost always funded out of a marketing budget. EdTech ambassador programs are marketing.
And that's good to just be front and clear about it, because a lot of us get, and I'm number one in this list. I'll put myself out there, and maybe you also can, maybe you're also following my footsteps, where we get these shiny things thrown out in front of us, and the glitter gets in our eyes, and our vision gets a little fuzzy. And then we get into places that we shouldn't have got into. And then we get frustrated because we've now gone down the road of this relationship and it wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be. And I'm just telling you right now, as someone that has been down the road, that just make sure it's going to benefit you, and you know what you want to go ahead and put into it, and that it's okay, that you feel like and understand that, as Mike just put it, it's marketing on their end, and that it's not, they aren't your friend. They may be very nice people that work there. And I actually, if I want to put one person on this thing, someone that worked in a marketing department, that was probably a person that I would call a friend even to today, because she actually developed relationships with the ambassadors, and that was unique. And that's Bridget Heaton. So sorry, Bridget, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry if I put you out there. But anyway, I'm telling you that it is unique in that way, because it actually ended up being a relationship, a real true thing beyond the work that needed to be done on her end. She needs to do a job. And we were doing, things. There's a kind of give and take there. But very rarely in the end is it going to be a true, friendship or relationship. Just know what you're getting into. And that's my words of caution is, and I feel really good right now because I don't feel like I have, like I'm in the middle of one of those devastating relationships. I feel like I'm like, I'm on the outside looking in on this and going like, hey, I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. I did a lot of different things and I had a lot of opportunities and now I'm kind of on the outside looking in and I'm happy to be in that place.
Yeah, I think it's worth prefacing that there are good people working in a lot of these situations, yes. Not all of them. And, so what would be an example? Like Ann Cosma at Flipgrid.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's true.
If Ann Cosma was a religion, I would be the head priest of that religion.
I 100% agree.
Right?
Yeah. So you're right. There are people. You're right.
There are people, and some of those people are doing it right and care legitimately about the people that they connect with.
Absolutely.
You can tell that that's the case with someone like Anne because she has a body of work that demonstrates that. There's not the same body of work that demonstrates that across the board. There are companies that used to do this well that don't do this well anymore.
Agreed.
And it's because things change and people like Bridget are no longer there.
Yes.
And stuff like that, but you are not, again, still, you are not allowed to feel betrayed by a profit-driven company that will always do what's best for them, regardless of what that means to its end users and their ambassador programs. Listen, if a company is coming on tough times and they're spending $10,000-$15,000 a year on swag for their ambassadors, and they need that money to do something else, guess what's going away? Your swag.
Bye-bye.
Right? And but that's how things can get easily chipped away. Mm-hmm. And then you feel like you're getting nothing in return, and all they're doing is asking you to do, can you come on this video? Can you write this blog post? Can you host this chat? Can you do this? And can you do this? And can you do this? And you're getting nothing in return. And I like that Glenn, like, it has to be, you have to at the very least feel like this relationship is improving my practice. Mm-hmm. You are helping me be a better teacher. If you can't even do that, then why are you there? For pencils?
Coffee mugs?
for a freaking gross branded mask? Come on, man. Just don't debase yourself like that.
Yep.
You are worth more. You are worth something to them. That's why it's funded from marketing. You have value, and don't let that value ever be diminished, and don't ever take less than what you're worth. And you need to feel like this is working for you.
Absolutely.
And listen, if that working for you is, again, that it's improving the way I teach, you are helping me teach better, and that's all you need, then take it. Right?
Yeah.
But there are people, and Glenn is actually one of them, that has constantly been asked for things. Constantly been asked for things. And it's also constantly getting screwed.
I love that segment, by the way. that was a good segment. Thanks for letting me get those feelings out there. And really, it's my advice to anybody out there, because maybe you haven't ventured down that road and you were thinking about it. Just know what you're getting into. That's all I'm really saying. Yes.
You guys stop being such a nice guy, Glenn. Stop saying yes. Stop saying yes to everything. Anyways, our good friend Chris Aviles asked this question, and I saw it, but I think I was like cooking breakfast for my kid or something when I saw it. The next day or whatever. But he wrote, "Edu debate self-defense should be part of physical education. What do you say?" I feel like this is a really easy answer.
Yeah, go ahead, bud. Because I knew you would like this.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I do think, I think my only preface to this is that martial arts has a code.
Yes.
And martial arts has a history and a cultural history as well. And it's not the same as, baseball has a cultural history. But, let's be honest, it's not the same as the cultural history of martial arts. Mm-hmm. You can't, we're not comparing the cultural history of karate to the cultural history and to the cultural kind of like narrative of karate that isn't the same as the cultural narrative of baseball, at least not in the same way. I think there's a great cultural narrative to baseball. In fact, actually, baseball is great and has a good cultural narrative. But what I'm actually saying is that if you are qualified to teach a martial art or you can bring in someone who's qualified to teach a martial art, you should absolutely not hesitate at any time to do that. Even ask for a volunteer. And I'll tell you something. Let me tell you something. Speaking of marketing.
Yeah, let's hear it.
You reach out to a dojo and say, can you get your sensei to come into the school for a week and teach a unit on karate? I guarantee you they will do that. You got to let them hand out the flyer, right?
After it's over, they can recruit.
That they can take to their parents. But I guarantee you, if you're a phys ed teacher out there and you're not bringing in someone from your community, your business community, to teach karate or taekwondo or judo or jiu-jitsu or whatever to your kids, you should think about doing that because they'll say yes. I'm just saying I wouldn't teach it to my students. I'm not qualified.
Sure.
I feel like it would be disrespectful. And there's a level of respect for teaching that specific sport that I want to maintain. That's my take.
100%. Oh, I love that take. And I hadn't even thought of it in that lens too, Mike, that's a really good lens as far as the respect for the expertise level that's needed in those specific things. Just in general self-defense, whether it should be taught in physical education, I think absolutely so. And it kind of leads me along a path of things that I think should be taught in physical education, things like yoga, things like lifelong sports, things that you can play for your whole entire life, not just played when you're young and able to kind of go and do things, but these lifelong activities that you can go ahead and do anytime, and be able to do those things and enjoy them, and really enjoy the activities either with groups or sometimes as an individual to be able to enjoy those things. I was thinking about you and your passion for cycling and how cycling itself, like just the concept of that, those types of athletic endeavors, I think we should embrace some of those things that we normally wouldn't have said, oh, that's the thing, especially in the United States, where we're super inundated by just a few sports. Football, number one, and then basketball probably very high on the list, and then coming in third would probably be baseball. And those are kind of like the super dominant thing because that's kind of where kind of a lot of things, the professional leagues and so on and so forth. But as far as our kids are concerned, I think, and now as I have kids, they actually could care less about football. They could care less about basketball and baseball, which really hurts my sporting heart because I grew up and that's all I cared about was sports as I was growing up. that was my passion. Not only professional sports, but me playing those sports, they really couldn't care less. But you know what? It's not really going to matter in their lives. You know what's going to matter is that they are healthy kids, that they participate in activities that will keep them physically fit, but that they enjoy. So it doesn't always have to be these mainstream activities. It can be a variety of different things. And that's why I love this tweet, by Chris Vilas about self-defense, things like self-defense and yoga and cycling up here in Minnesota, maybe in Canada, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, just some different things that you could expose the students to that maybe they wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise, and then to get passionate about it, and then they can do those things. So I think it's a good one to bring up on the podcast and hear what you guys have to say. What other things should we be, teaching in our physical education courses?
Minnesota is a huge hockey state, man.
Oh, hockey. Sorry.
I don't know why you're not like hockey.
I'm not from Minnesota. So
you're not, but you live in Minnesota.
Otherwise, I should have brought up hockey. People are going to be really mad at me.
But the other sport, I'll tell you. You want to know what I learned? What I did in high school?
What'd you do?
Curling.
Really? That's super cool.
So first off, everybody, I know almost all of our audience is Americans. Folks, you're sleeping on curling. Curling is dope.
We get to watch it at the Winter Olympics. Everybody loves curling.
Curling is the perfect blend of like strategy and complexity and precision and athleticism, especially if you're like the lead, the second, or the vice. That's the first, the second, and the third throwers of the rocks. So there's 8 rocks, right? Okay. So each curler throws 2, right?
Who's the guy that's scraping the ice?
So the lead and the second. Okay. So this is the order: lead, second, vice, skip.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you ready? Curling 101. Lead
second, vice, skip. Okay. I'm learning.
Each throw 2 rocks. Okay. The lead and the second sweep for the. So the vice and the second sweep for the lead.
Okay.
Right? The lead and the second sweep for the lead and the second, or the lead and the vice sweep for the second.
Okay.
Okay. The lead and the second sweep for the vice. And the lead and the second sweep for the skip. So if you're a lead or a second, you're sweeping a lot. Okay. Sweeping is hard.
It looks intense.
It's exhausting.
It looks intense.
It is a real workout, folks. So like, if you have a curling club in your general vicinity, there's also, like in Canada anyways, there's a great tradition. Like curling is awesome, and the tradition of curling, like the club atmosphere and like the community that you can develop from curling. And there are kids that are curling kids, like there are hockey kids or baseball kids, and they grow up together and they curl all through their adult lives together, and like all of this stuff. And so you become part of a community. And the post curling beers are always good. Like that's a legit tradition. That's how it's Canadian. But curling is really hard. And so listen, I'm while you were talking, I was literally looking for a curling club in the Sauk Rapids area, and I don't see one, but there might be one in St. Cloud,
that's right by me.
Also right by you. So you should check out whether there's a curling club in St. Cloud, and I demand that you go try curling with you and your kids and your wife. Go to the family. There's almost always like free nights where you can go, and like there'll be like experienced people that will take you through it and teach you how to do it. You won't have to buy anything. They have the brooms. They have all the things. and you can just go and have a good night and see if it's up your alley. But I legit think that not enough people are into curling, and maybe that'll be my mission to make more Americans curl.
Love it.
I would love to actually get into curling again. I used to curl very competitively, very, very competitively. So I was on my high school team, which, wasn't like the most popular high school team in our school, but it was okay. And I felt good. And as an adult, I curled, and won a couple tournaments and stuff like that. So I'd like to get into it. I think the Irvins should curl. Is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, I think that's a challenge. We're gonna do it. It exists around here. We can do this.
So we have hope. We have hope for Joe Biden. We have hope for vaccines, and we have hope that Glenn and family will curl. And so that is a lot of hope for one episode. When we come back, we will be talking to Laura Schifter, so stay with us. Welcome back. Our guest is a lecturer on education with the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she teaches courses on federal policy and special education. She's a senior fellow with the Aspen Institute, leading the K12 Climate Action Initiative, and a fellow with the Century Foundation. After graduating from college, she taught elementary school in San Francisco. She earned her Ed.D in education policy, leadership, and instructional practice, and an Ed.M in mind, brain, and education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. We're thrilled to have her on the podcast with us now. Welcome to OnEducation, Laura Schifter.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike and Glenn. It's exciting to be here.
It's fun introducing people with such a long list of credentials. There's a lot to go over there, and that's exciting. Anyways, we're thrilled to have you on. And I was saying before we got started that I'm a bit of a policy wonk, as our listeners would know. So I'll talk policy all day. Laura, Joe Biden has been the president now for about a week, and we've seen a flurry of activity. We were talking about that before we went live as well. Mostly in the realm of executive actions. Some of these executive actions have been around the issue of climate change, which I think is a relief to a lot of people, to say it mildly. And while I think you can safely say that almost all of the kind of the tentpole issues of the Biden administration are important to students, things like racial equality and getting over the coronavirus pandemic, I think it's safe to say that the environment is an issue that directly impacts young kids, our students. So I guess to set up a series of questions, the first question is, how much impact does the education system have on the environment?
Yeah. So the education system is a large public sector. I mean, when you actually think about it and take a step back, there are over 98,000 schools across the country. Those schools are the second largest consumers of energy in the public sector for public sector buildings. They operate the largest mass transit fleet in the country with 480,000 school buses. They serve over 7 billion meals annually. All of that comes with an environmental impact. So our school system itself, contribute to carbon emissions and actually have a real big role to play in reducing that environmental impact.
What do you suspect the Biden administration will do in the realm of education to stem the tide of climate change?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're really hoping to see, and I think we'll continue to see more over the next couple of weeks, is how the Biden administration is approaching climate change across all agencies. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we have been working a lot in trying to do with the Aspen Institute is trying to make sure that in this cross-agency work that they're including the Department of Education. So one of the big things that they have done is they've established an Office of Domestic Climate Policy within the White House, and Gina McCarthy is leading that up. And part of that effort is going to be on coordinating climate action across different agencies. One of the things that we would like to do is to make sure the Department of Education is a part of that. But our education policies don't just live there. So what we're hoping to see the administration do is a range of things to help schools address climate change, from investing in school infrastructure to help schools actually transition to renewable energy, reduce that environmental footprint, and save money in the long term in doing some of this stuff. We hope to see the Biden administration provide some support for school districts in providing professional development to help make sure that teachers have what they need in order to teach about climate change in the classroom. And it's not just teaching about the climate science, it's teaching students about things like concepts like energy, and also how they can take action within their own community. So all of these things the Biden administration can start doing. And one of the big things that they can do without any of that action is just start talking more about the role that education can play in fighting climate change and trying to connect those dots, because oftentimes people leave education out of the conversation, and yet education can be a big part of climate solutions.
It's everything. It's everything in every way. I'm curious, actually, so we know that history education is taught differently all across America. We know that a lot of, science education is taught differently all across America. How is environmental science, especially, I'm super interested in how it's taught at like the elementary level and like the middle school and early high school years, which is like the real formative years where you can really like influence a kid's, behavior and mind as far as like these things are concerned. How is it taught across the board there? And is there work that needs to be done, do you think, in making sure that the message and the science is first and the goals are equal kind of across the board, across the whole country? I don't think that that's the way it is now, is it?
Yeah, so it's as you would expect in America's public education system, it's quite variable. And one of the things that we've done is we released a state policy landscape looking at some of this stuff. Of course, our most comparable metric for looking at this across the country right now is state standards, to try and see where climate change and sustainability are taught in schools. And, one of the things that we found is the next generation science standards has climate change really integrated across the standards. And I believe it's 22 states that have adopted the next generation science standard, but 29 states have climate change in their science standards, taught as human caused, in particular climate change. But then looking at things like sustainability and thinking about, humans' impact on the environment and how that relates to things like in social studies. Concepts of sustainability are only included in social studies standards in 5 states, across the country, and addressing climate change through that work. And so I think, what we really have seen is a lot of variability, but there are some really interesting and best practices to look at. There's a program you talked initially about, that early age group, and there's a program called Learning in Places, and one of the principal investigators with that initiative is a woman who we're working with K12 Climate Action. Her name's Megan Bang, and what they're really looking to do with that work is not just say, it's about teaching climate change. It's really teaching students about the way that they're interacting with the environment and thinking about the ecosystems altogether, and really changing people's perceptions and relationship with the environment and their community. And so it's exciting to kind of see and learn more about this work. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is try and elevate some of these stories that are going on, because there are a lot of people out there that are interested in this topic and want to start doing it. And so they're trying to look to find out where it's being done and how to do it better.
It's interesting. So Glenn and I earlier in the podcast episode talked about, the new administration and just the general sense of, maybe a 250-ish pound weight lifted off all of our shoulders, maybe even more. I don't want to guess, but also just the general sense of, relief, the collective sigh of relief that I think the world expressed last week. And I'm curious what your level of optimism is about our ability to do all of this. I mean, we know that this is a problem. We feel like we have the right people in place to make it happen. There's still, a Senate, I guess, that's, pretty divided, and it's going to be hard to do some things in that regard. On a scale of 1 to 10, where's your hope level that things can actually get done?
I wish I had a crystal ball and saying it would be a 10 across the board and in every way.
Yeah.
But I teach on federal policy, and I think one of the things that we're always talking about in the class that I teach on is recognizing and trying to take advantage of the policy windows that open. And this is a major policy window that is opening. You have a change in administration. You have a really significant change in kind of ideological perspective from the outgoing administration to who's coming in. And even though you have, tighter margins within the House and the Senate, there is a real opportunity to try and move some big proposals, because you also have the fact that we're dealing with an unprecedented crisis with COVID and climate change, and these things are barreling down on us. And so I think it's figuring out ways to bring people on board to try and pursue moving an agenda forward. And truthfully, I think we'll see how things go with the COVID relief package, but also thinking about things like investing in school infrastructure is something that could have a lot of bipartisan support. It's going to get people back to work. We have this economic crisis. It's a way to invest money that can be a good one-time federal investment and really make a difference for schools across the country. Things like investing in career and technical education has bipartisan support. So I think there's a window of opportunity, and I think it's really up to us to do a lot of the work and to bring people on board with an agenda to make sure that something gets done.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about your book. How did you get here? Students with Disabilities and Their Journeys to Harvard, which the book offers clear accounts of the challenges and biases that young disabled students have encountered. Can you tell our listeners more about the book and maybe even about your journey writing it?
Yeah. So when I was getting my master's actually in education, I'm not sure if you are aware, but I'm dyslexic. And one of the main reasons why I entered the field of education to begin with is because of the impact that teachers had on me growing up. When I had teachers that lowered expectations for my success or didn't really provide me with accommodations, I found that I didn't enjoy school and I didn't do as well in the class. But luckily, I had a lot of teachers on the reverse of that who held me to high expectations, found ways for me to reach those expectations in the class, and really helped motivate me to follow an academic career. And I think, what really drove me to education was feeling that personal impact that teachers had on my own success, and wanting to enter education to try and figure out ways to have more students be able to have those opportunities that I benefited from. And when I was getting my master's, I was lucky enough to take a class with Tom Hare, who is an amazing mentor. He was actually head of special education under President Bill Clinton. But he was one of the first teachers I really had day one when I told him I was dyslexic, and he embraced that wholeheartedly and could not be more thrilled to have a student with a disability in his class. And shortly after that year, he started to talk to me about, well, we should start writing a book about more students with disabilities who have gone to Harvard. And so I connected with him on that. We identified several students that Tom had taught at Harvard who had disabilities, various disabilities, from learning disabilities like my own to visual impairments, hearing impairments, a few students who were deaf-blind, students with cerebral palsy, and really talking to them about their journeys to getting to Harvard. And what we really found in talking to people is that a lot of us had very similar themes in our lives that enabled us to have success. Some of those themes were having really strong parents or caregivers who really held us to high expectations and didn't let other people kind of lower expectations for our success. Having those teachers in place who were really cheerleaders and really help push people along, figuring out ways to kind of advocate and self-advocate a lot was required of students. And developing strategies is one of the biggest things. Often, I think the students that we had spoken to were rarely taught explicit strategies on how they learned best, but students kind of figured them out on their own, which helped them then succeed.
It's amazing, the power of a good teacher. I mean, we're here we have you on to talk about policy, and it still comes back to something like that, which is amazing how, we get there in every way. But man, oh man, like to have dyslexia and, you're a Harvard professor who writes books and talks about, environmental policy in education. I mean, it's an incredible accomplishment. And I absolutely believe that there's got to be a common thread to some of this, and it's got to be having, you said good parents, but good teachers, right?
Absolutely. And I think back on it, and I remember my fifth grade teacher who I was like stumbling in fifth grade, and she was, all of my papers that I would write would be like one sentence. I went to the park. It was fun. And that was it, because I didn't want to write anything else, because I was worried about misspelling things. I was worried about how my writing would look. And I remember her just sitting down with me and saying, I want to hear everything that you have to say. I don't care about the spelling. I don't care about the punctuation. Just get out what you want to say. And then we'll go back and deal with that later. And just being accepting of that was one big thing for me. And I was lucky enough to have teachers all across my schooling that just really did provide me those opportunities and help me achieve what I was capable of achieving.
So Laura, how can our listeners connect with you online, maybe even lead us to where we can purchase your book?
So you can follow me. I'm on Twitter at Laura Schifter 12. And you can find me online on the Harvard Graduate School of Education webpage. And that would be one place where you could link to the book as well.
Laura Schifter, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the On Podcast Media Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Monica Burns, Mike Matera, Tisha Richmond, and many more by visiting onpodcastmedia.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at OnEducationPod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found on Twitter at IrvSpanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/OnEducationPod. We're also on Instagram at OnEducationPod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Participate, for supporting us. Check out participate.com to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome and see you soon.